Okay, let's see. Hopefully this is working now. Hello, can everyone hear me? Hello, can everyone hear me? Hopefully this should be working. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Okay, you guys can hear me. We're good, right? Okay, thank God. All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, guys, I apologize. We're gonna have to try to do this as quickly as possible. Yeah, we're gonna have to end at 8:15 largely because again I have other things. Okay, I'm glad I'm glad you guys hear me. Thank goodness. I apologize for that. Obviously, it's always something with our class. I don't know what's going on, but okay. Let's begin. Yeah, so I see Rachel, you just asked the question, who fought in the Peloponnesian War? Um, let's get right into it. So the Peloponnesian War is a series of battles between um, Athens and Sparta, coming really at the ends of the golden age of Athens. Athens and Sparta wanting to finally determine which of the two city-states was the more powerful of the two. The Peloponnesian War basically brings a defeat for Athens in a number of fronts. First of all, as we said, Athens undergoes or experiences a plague in the second year of the war, kills Pericles. Ultimately, the first part of the war, as we said, ends up as a stalemate. No one really wins. And then a number of years later, Athens goes and tries to take over the city-state of Syracuse, an ally of Athens, excuse me, an ally of Sparta. They're routed, they're killed, and basically that marks the end of Sparta's dominance as the end of Athens' dominance as a city-state. Good. Okay. So getting to a couple of the questions. The Do we have to know about Homer? Yeah, you have to know about Homer. We didn't talk very much about Homer. We talked a little bit about what he did, his two works. This is part of the Greek Dark Ages, where with the defeat of the Mycenaeans, we enter a period where we have very little culture being produced in ancient Greece. We have very little. Very little anything being developed in ancient Greece. The Greek Dark Ages is a period of time where we're very little is actually being determined. This begins around the year 1200. Again, after the Mycenaeans are defeated, they're defeated by a group called the Dorians. They're defeated, and from about 1200 until Homer, around the year 750 or so, begins to tell his tales of the Iliad and the Odyssey, telling the tales of the Trojan War. So that period from about 1200 to about 750 or so is considered the Greek Dark Ages. Okay, who won and fought in the Persian Wars? Well, there are a series of Persian wars that were fought. We should know the major battles we discussed. Darius, the various battles that were fought there. Again, the various battles from Darius wanting to conquer Athens around 499. Discussions of why he wanted to possibly conquer Greece and Athens, whether it was for purposes of showing his greatness, whether it was to expand the empire, to increase the prestige of the king at home, to sort of push the boundaries of the empire out. We talked about a couple of the moments of the Greek Persian battles. We talked about the Battle of Marathon, which was a rousing win victory for the Athenians, for Athens. We talked about the Battle of Thermopylae, where the 300 Spartans basically allowed the Athenians to return to Athens and to retreat and to defend Athens. So we talked about that. And again, that was with Xerxes. And finally, the Athenians were able to defeat the Persians in a variety in two battles, Battle of Salamis, and finally in 479 the Battle of Plataea, which we didn't mention by name. So yeah, that's what we discussed there. Okay, good. Do we need to know about the 4 types of governments? Yeah, absolutely. You need to know about the 4 types of governments. You need to know the definitions, what those governments are. Absolutely, you need to know that. Yes. Do we need to know about the class assignments? Do we need to know about the Trojan War? Yeah, you should know about the Trojan War. It's part of the, very possibly could be on the test exactly. Is what we learned today in class on the test? Sure, absolutely. What we did today is going to be on the test. What we do tomorrow in class is going to be on the test. So yeah, absolutely. So that's actually everything is going to be on the test. Everything. Okay. Good. What else? What about the Trojan War? Just know the general story of the Trojan War. First of all, you should know the general story of the Trojan War, but also we talked about the question of whether the Trojan War actually happened. We discussed the fact as to what exactly was being fought over in the Trojan War. Whether it was in terms of the battle between the Mycenaeans and Troy, we discussed the fact that during the 1200s they did in fact fight a 10-year battle. Know the basic narrative, the basic story. Again, what they were fighting for, very possibly, and this is what we said. According to some, and again, this is what we discussed. That the Trojans and the Mycenaeans were fighting over a narrow strip of water to a waterway into the Black Sea. Troy basically sat on this waterway. The Mycenaeans wanted to control it in order to expand trade, and the Mycenaeans and Troy go to battle over this small area of water. Ultimately, the Mycenaeans defeat the Trojans and burn the city of Troy to the ground. Okay, that's in terms of that's not the story, obviously, the Trojan War. That's the history behind the Trojan War. Just to keep that in mind. Okay, good. Can you give an example of who we would compare something in terms of test questions? I don't understand, because the first test was more straightforward with basically just a lot of places. Yeah, it was. Again, a lot of what the test is going to be is a lot of rehashing of what we discussed in class. And if you think about the philosophy stuff we've been doing over the last couple of days, that I think there's a good way of thinking about. If I were to ask you, let's say Homer was walking, let's say Plato was walking down the street one day and he met Solon. What would Plato would have said, what may have Plato said to Solon in talking about the nature of Solon's changes in governments? What would Aristotle would have said? What would Socrates have said? What would Confucius have said to Solon or to Draco, for instance? So that's a kind of question we should talk about. But there are also going to be questions very similar to what you did in the paper, what you discussed in the paper. Okay. Okay. Do we need to know a lot about Alexander the Great? So what we're going to, just to give you, we're going to spend a very brief time tomorrow talking about Alexander the Great, just going through the story, going through the narrative. Making sure we understand it, making sure we can understand it, but it's basically going to be from the textbook. What we're going to do is in terms of the significance of Alexander, particularly the rise of Hellenism. We're actually going to be talking about that in the third quarter when we talk about, we do the first couple of weeks of the third quarter is dedicated to discussing the rise of Rabbinic Judaism. And there we're going to spend a considerable amount of time talking about the influence of Hellenism on Judaism in the Second Temple period. So the influence of Alexander and Hellenism, we're sort of going to wait on a little bit until we get to the third quarter. The narrative you have to know of Alexander the Great, what he did, what he accomplished, his father Philip of Macedonia, what he did, what he accomplished. But besides the narrative, that's what we're going to be. Meaning that the narrative was what we're going to be really focusing on. Okay. Okay. Let's go back to some of the questions. Okay. Let's see what happened during the Golden Age. I'm not going in order here. During the Golden Age in Athens, we see just a rise in interest in culture, in the creation of culture and the creation of cultural events. We see the rise of the age of Pericles is the age of Socrates. It's the age of some of the great ways, some of the great playwrights of Greek culture. We see the Golden Age was when Athens was experiencing its greatest strength, both in terms of military might, in terms of economic might, but also in terms of cultural might and cultural power. So that's basically the Golden Age of Athens. Let's see. Who are the archons? The archons were the chief magistrates who were appointed by Areopagus before the period of Solon's reforms. The archons were very much in charge of were in charge of Athens before the reforms, before the changes of Solon. The archons were appointed by the Areopagus. The Areopagus were made up of the former archons. And so basically, before Solon, Athens was very much an oligarchy in the system, in the form of government that it had. The archons being these rich, these powerful individuals, and with Solon's reforms, we see the rise and the move towards a greater democratic process. Is everything that we need to know for the test in the textbook? No, the textbook does not go into the depth that we did in describing, delineating detail of the Greek political culture, nor does the textbook go into any detail really as to the discussions of philosophy that we've been having over the last couple of days. Okay. Good. Do we need to compare Sparta and Athens like we did for the essay? Yeah, we may have. There may be questions that compare Athens and Sparta like you had in the essay. Absolutely. Is the test going to be in that blue booklet again? Yes. I love blue books. You will come to love blue books over the course of your time at Frisch. So yes, absolutely to the blue books. Miri, is it plausible that we will need to compare women from any societies other than Athens and Sparta? No, you will not. I'm not asking you specific material from earlier points in time. I'm not going to do that for this exam. This exam is not cumulative. It's not based on what we've discussed previously. It's based on this past unit on ancient Greece. Okay, I hope that's clear. This is coming from Ethan, was the boule in Sparta? The boule was in Athens. The boule decided which topics were going to be discussed in the ecclesia, in the assembly in Athens. Okay. So what people could you compare other than Athens and Sparta? No, meaning you're going to be, you'll compare Athens and Sparta. That's the point. Again, I'm going to say what I said last week about the test. The test is going to be a shorter test. It's going to be on a smaller amount of material. It's not going to be the as long or as comprehensive in material as it was as the first test was. It's just not. So it's going to be smaller. It's going to be shorter. Obviously, because of where it's falling out, we're doing this test in the middle of the quarter as opposed to the end of the quarter, which we did last time. You have, and so that's just the nature of this exam. Okay, so maybe you don't need to. Everyone can take a deep breath. We don't have to worry about this more than anything else. It's one test. It's not gonna, that's we can relax a little bit. Are we going to have to compare the different ideas of the three different philosophers? Sure, absolutely, yeah. And we'll just we'll mention briefly tomorrow a couple of the we'll mention a couple of the other Chinese philosophers, so you'll have to compare them as well. Fun times, fun times, absolutely. Okay, more questions. If you say it's a shorter test, does it mean that the questions will be harder? No, it does not mean the questions will be harder. It means you'll have very similar questions, and the questions will not be harder. The questions will be just as hard. What is the boule? Matthew, we just mentioned the boule. The boule is the institution in Athens that decides the topics that are going to be discussed in the ecclesia, in the assembly, in Athens. The boule also, in times of crisis and war, could make decisions without the assembly itself. Okay. Can we review the differences of the philosophers? Sure. Okay. It's really just two philosophers, because in terms of Socrates, he doesn't leave actually any writings of his own, and his ideas are really only coming through what Plato has to say, putting the words into the mouth of Socrates. So really, what we're gonna, if I'm going to ask you to compare, I'm going to ask you to compare Plato and Aristotle, not Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, but Plato and Aristotle. So I could ask you to talk about differences between Plato and Aristotle when it comes to the theory of forms, and for Plato, the theory of forms. If I look at the Apple Pencil I'm holding in my hand, for Plato, I should, by looking at this, think about the nature of the roundness of the top, the sharpness of the point. I should think about the pencilness of this, as opposed to Aristotle, who believes, in holding this, I should think, I can learn everything I know by just holding it, and by looking at it, and by feeling it, and by writing with it. That's a major difference between Aristotle and Plato when it comes to their understanding of philosophy more broadly. We said this today. Aristotle looks at the world around him. He's, again, what is called an empiricist. He looks at the world around him, and he draws conclusions based on what he sees. Plato doesn't. Plato argues that what we see around us is not the highest form of reality. What we see around us is the physical manifestation, and what we have to do as philosophers, as thinkers, is to conceive of the greater, the more in-depth meaning of what I'm looking at. So that's one thing. You can think that comparing and contrasting Plato and Aristotle. You can compare and contrast Plato and Aristotle when it comes to government, what the purpose of government is. For For Plato, it's justice, and for Aristotle, it's the good, and determining the best kinds of government. For Plato, it's the philosopher king, and for Aristotle, it's the middle class creating a government for themselves. So that's important. Both Plato and Aristotle go through the different kinds of governments. They both critique the various kinds of government, and they both argue for the various deficiencies of the different governments. So that's something you should keep in mind as well. Okay, let's see. Good. Let's see. Excellent. If we do have to know about the allegory of the cave, can I explain the allegory of the cave? So the allegory of the cave is again, it's used as a way to describe, to explain Aristotle's theory of forms. The allegory of the cave is what Plato discusses. Is there's a cave of people. In the cave, people are chained up. They are facing a wall. They can't see what's behind them. They can't see the things that are walking behind them. Well, hello, Tamira. You're joining our ninth grade Google Hangout. Welcome. Everyone say hi to Tamira. So in the cave, you have people hung up looking at, and what they see is not the things that are passing through the entrance to the cave, but they're seeing the shadows on the wall. They're seeing the shadows on the wall of what's passing behind them. And Plato uses this allegory, and in the allegory, Plato describes how one of these people is able to leave the cave and he goes outside. And when he goes outside, he's first blinded by the lights, and he doesn't understand what he sees. He sees the images, and he doesn't believe that they're true. But slowly, but surely, as time goes on, he realizes that what he's looking at outside of the cave is real, is reality. Even though it was blinding at first and difficult to see at first, that's what he saw. He goes back into the cave and tells the people in the cave that what they're seeing with the shadows they're seeing in the wall is not really reality. But they don't believe him. They laugh at him. But he knows the truth. And this is what Plato uses. This is the allegory that Plato uses to describe forms. What we see, the general mass of people, are the people chained up in the cave. We see the shadows in the wall of the physical manifestation of the reality. Some people are able to go outside of the cave and see the reality and understand the reality. Those are the philosophers who perceive and understand the deepest depths of reality. And so that's the use of the allegory of the cave. Again, it explains, according to what the video said yesterday, the allegory of the cave has been used to explain what philosophers have been trying to do. Philosophers have a greater depth of knowledge. The masses, meaning the people in the cave, only see the shadows. And philosophers are trying to help those in the cave understand that there's a greater depth of reality that they're not understanding. But you can also take the allegory of the cave to explain Plato's theory of forms. And that's the same. That's another way of taking it. Oh, Tamira, this is more fun than writing my French Revolution essay. Yes, Tamira is a sophomore. She was in my class last year. She's in my class this year. She has to write an essay on the French Revolution. Some of you next year may have to write that essay as well. So, she's just having fun. She has a test next week, so we'll be doing this. I'll be doing this again on Tuesday night. For the sophomores, talking about the French Revolution, talking about the age of industrialization. So if any of the freshmen want to join us on Tuesday night of next week in preparation for the exam on Thursday, you guys can. It's a really long and annoying essay. Sorry, Tamira. Sorry that it's long, but you got to write, so you got to keep writing. So yeah, okay. Okay, yay, Tuesday nights, the night before Chumash test. Yes, exactly. Oh. And Chloe's here too. Fantastic. Okay, more questions. More questions, guys. More questions. Hi, Chloe. Joseph, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for more questions here. I'm waiting for more questions for you guys. I'm obviously happy to answer a question. Let's see. What does Noah say? We learned about philosophers. Socrates, put Aristotle, Confucius. Do we need to compare? Do those relate to the government officials we learned about? Yeah, meaning we have to. You know, one of the questions I may ask you is, again, as I said before, imagine a dialogue between Plato and Pericles, or imagine a dialogue between Plato or Aristotle and Solon, or Plato and Aristotle and, or let's say Confucius and Draco. What would Confucius say in critiquing Draco's laws? So that's potentially a possible question. So absolutely. Can I discuss everything important? No, I don't even know what that means because I'm gonna fail. Okay, Mary, you're not gonna fail. So yeah. Rachel, we talked about the Dark Ages a little bit ago, so I'm not going to reference it again. But can you see the different types of governments? Sure. So we talked about a couple of different kinds of governments. Can I talk about the Athenians or Spartans? Let's try to make the questions a little more pointed and specific as opposed to just talk about the Athenians or Spartans. Let's try to keep the questions a little more pointed. It makes it easier for me to answer them. I'm not going to just rehash everything we discussed in class. That's why you take notes in class. So let's ask me more pointed questions. I think it's going to be easier for all of us. Okay, so let's just mention briefly the different kinds of government that we discussed. We talked about four different kinds of governments. First, we talked about monarchy. Nation is ruled by king or queen, hereditary, divine rights. Aristocracy, where the state is ruled by the nobility. The rule is hereditary based on land ownership. Athens, state ruled, again, the state is ruled by the nobility, landowning families. The rule, again, is hereditary, passes from father to son. In oligarchy, the state is ruled by a small group of elite citizens. Rule is based on wealth. The ruling elite controls the military. And the democracy, where the state is ruled by its citizens, majority rules based on citizenship. Those are the different kinds of those are the four different kinds of government we discussed. Let's see, what else do we have here? Geography of Athens. Yeah, we talked about the geography of Athens. We talked about the fact that or not the geography of Athens, but the geography of Greece. That's what we discussed. We discussed kick the sophomores off. Okay, Tamira and Chloe, we all very much appreciate your willingness to be here. But I do want to try to just focus with the freshmen for a little bit. We don't have a lot of time left, so if you could, thank you. I appreciate it. The geography of ancient Greece is ancient Greece, again, is mountainous. It has islands. The geography is important because it dictates the history. It dictates how Greece was able to survive. The sea-shaped Greek civilization, the Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, all of the neighboring seas were important. Greece has rugged mountains. The mountains divide the land, and this is important because it divides the land into um, into different regions, into different city-states. This affected Greek political life. Obviously, we said there's no single government. The Greeks developed small, independent communities and independent city-states, and that's again, that's what we really discussed. So that's in terms of the mountains. The mountains add really to the geography. The land itself was stony, was not arable, meaning most of the land was not farmable. There's very little farmable land in Greece. What are the natural resources of Greece? There are very few. And that was exactly the problem. That there were very few natural resources, and that's partially why, actually, and we discussed this. That was partially why the big issue with the Persian War was that there was no real desire on behalf of, there doesn't seem to have been a real issue for Darius to have wanting to take over the Greek city-states, because there were no natural resources. So that's there are very few natural resources. And we also, the last thing we mentioned was the climate. The climate was relatively warm, and so this allowed people to live outside. Good. Okay. What was the daily life like in Athens? So you read about Athenian education, differences between boys and girls. That was basically it in terms of the day-to-day lives in Athens. Culture was obviously very important in the day-to-day lives of Athens, as opposed to Sparta. In terms of the what else? Yeah, I think that's basically it when it comes to the day-to-day life of Athens. Differences in education, differences in women. I think that's pretty important. Yeah, lots of arts in Athens. Lots of arts. Arts, culture, architecture. That was really the main focus in Athens, as opposed to in Sparta. Okay, good. Is the whole test Athens, Sparta, wars, kings, philosophy? Basically, yeah, that's basically it. That's basically it. No, you're basically right. Okay, let's see. Can I explain the 5 branches of philosophy? Sure. So first is metaphysics, the study of existence, the study of existing as a human. Metaphysics, the existence of God, whether God exists. That's one of the major questions of metaphysics. Epistemology, the study of knowledge. What is knowledge? How do I know? What do I know? Ethics, the study of behavior, action concerning morality. How should I live? What basis do I make my decisions on? We have politics, the study of government, not just what the best government is, but how should one be a citizen? How does one contribute to one's community? And finally, aesthetics, the study of art, the study of beauty. What makes something beautiful? What makes something meaningful? What is beauty? What is meaning? That's those are the 5 branches of philosophy. Okay. Okay. Let's see what is next. How is Sparta ruled? Okay, so in Sparta we have, like in Athens, we have a series of different structures. We have the 2 kings in Sparta. We have the Gerousia. The Gerousia led the assembly, proposed the issues which the assembly was going to vote on. It consisted of 28 men over the age of 60. It also served as the highest court in Sparta. The ecclesia met once a month to all citizens. and it was open to all citizens in Sparta. There was an executive committee of 5 A4s um, who ran the day-to-day operations of the ecclesia um, in Sparta. Okay. Good. Did each philosopher study more, want one type of philosophy? Yes, meaning Plato and Aristotle wrote dozens and dozens of works on all different kinds of philosophy, politics, ethics, aesthetics, metaphysics. Absolutely, yeah. Meaning philosophers did not just write on one branch of philosophy. They talked about all branches of philosophy. Okay. Did we talk about Salon? And if not, can we? Okay. We mentioned Salon a couple of times. Salon brings Athens really into a democracy. Oh, you guys are going? Okay. See you guys later. Bye, Joseph. See you later. See you tomorrow. Salon introduced far-reaching democratic reforms, and oh, you're saying bye to the sophomore. Sorry. Okay. He introduced a number of he introduced far-reaching reforms, democratic reforms. Before that, he organized the Athenians into 4 social classes according to wealth. Only the members of the top 3 could actually take part in government. Before Solon's reforms, Athens was ruled by the 9 archons and appointed by the Areopagus. Solon introduced all of the various institutions of government. He introduced the ecclesia. He introduced the boule. He introduced these structures of government in Athens. Okay, good. What else? Okay, what else, guys? Please explain the Delian League. The Delian League comes as a result of the victory by Athens and Sparta, in a way, during the of the Persian Wars. Athens creates an alliance with a variety of other city-states, not with Sparta. And by the 470s, after the conclusion of the Persian Wars, Athens takes control of the Delian League. It's very much in charge of the Delian League, and Sparta rejects the Delian League, or doesn't participate in the Delian League. That will, eventually lead to the Peloponnesian Wars. The fact that both Athens and Sparta wanted to prove who really was the best of the two. For the question that I previously asked, do we only need to know the ones that we discussed in class or the textbook? That's what we need to know. Matthew, we just talked about Salon, so I'm not going to go. I talked about Salon just a couple of minutes ago. Do we have study tips? Yeah, I mean, the study tips are what I said before. You know what the test is going to be on. You know what the test is focused on. You should think about thinking about Athens and Sparta. Keep continuing to think about Athens and Sparta. Continuing to think about, particularly when it comes to the reading, thinking about the differences between Athens and Sparta when it comes to slavery, and then using that to think about other similarities and differences. And what I mentioned before about thinking about what the philosophers would say to the various Greek individuals that we knew, that the various Greek leaders that we discussed before. Okay. Other questions, guys? You have about 15 minutes left. By the way, we get through so much more this way than doing this in class. There's absolutely no reason why teachers should review in class. I think we should demand all teachers do this as a review for all tests. What do you guys think? Okay, Chloe and Samira, go write your essays. Okay, go write your essays. What if we have two the same day? Two tests the same day? Still, meaning like we're not doing this, we're not doing this in the day before the day, but we're doing this a couple days before the test. So, they can do a couple days before the exam. I think teachers should think about that. I wouldn't mind if we did both. Yeah, but even with the snafu tonight, we're still getting more time now than we would have in class. So, I like it that way. Is there a lot about Alexander the Great or very little? It's really, what the textbook says about Alexander the Great. I'm just going to open the textbook now and see what the textbook has on Alexander. It talks about Philip of Macedonia, the conquest of Greece. Alexander defeats the Persians. Alexander in India. We're basically tomorrow just going to go over some of these highlights, and that's basically it. Besides that, there isn't very much. Again, what we're doing is really just going over Alexander now, and we're going to be speaking about Hellenism in the beginning of the third quarter when we discuss Jewish history, Hellenism, and Jews in the Second Temple period, how that affects, for instance, really what that leads to in regards to the rise of the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans. Okay, will we have to compare the reading to other cultures? No, Mary, we're not. I'm not trying to trick you here when I say that material from earlier in the year is not going to be on the test. The reading, I'm not going to ask you to compare the reading to other cultures. Part of the questions on the reading is going to be reading comprehension. So I just want to make sure that you know that. Even though we didn't learn it yet, can you say? 1 second, guys. Okay, thanks. All right, guys, we can go for another 15 minutes or so. We don't have to end at 8:15. We can go until 8:30 or so. Even though we didn't learn yet, can you say what we're going to learn tomorrow? No, because first of all, it's in the textbook reading, and we don't get to everything in the textbook reading. So that's we're not going to hit everything that we do in the textbook. You're not going to hit everything in class that we do in the textbook reading that you have already read in the textbook reading. That's never the case. So yeah, do we need to know class notes for tomorrow about Alexander? Do we just need to know about the class notes for tomorrow? No, you need to know what the textbook says about it. You need to know what the textbook says about whatever is in the textbook you are responsible for. So yeah, for class tomorrow, can't we just review? No, we can't. This is why we're doing the review now. Do we need to know what happened in each individual battle of the 2 wars? You're talking about Alexander. You need to know what the textbook says. So, I'm not going to expect you to know, how many troops Alexander brings into Persia to conquer Persia. But, the Battle of the Granchius River is something that's really important. That's something that we'll, hopefully mention tomorrow. That's a very important battle. The fact that he was able to defeat he was able to conquer the Persepolis, the Persians' capital. That's important. So yeah, those are all important things. The breakup of his empire afterwards between Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antigonus. That's all important stuff, and we'll just mention it in the reading tomorrow, and I will mention it in class tomorrow, and you should know it from the reading. If we had to read the textbook and didn't go over it in class, do we still need to know the material? Yes, you do. Yep, absolutely. the Peloponnesian and Persian Wars, whatever. I mean, whatever we discussed in class and what was discussed in the textbook, you guys need to know. Yes, correct. Yes, the textbook is you need to know that information. Again, if you again, I'm not going to ask you about to define a specific battle. You know, I didn't do that in the first exam. I don't do that in my exams. I don't ask you to define for me or describe what a single battle is. But if you're answering a question, then I expect some details. If you're answering a question about you know, the Persian Wars, or you know, if I ask you a question about the Persian Wars, there's the expectation that you're going to be able to fill in a couple of details and talk a little bit about that. So absolutely. Okay, guys, we'll extend this to 8:30. We don't have to end this at 8:15, so we'll extend this to 8:30 if that's helpful for you guys. May not have any more questions. Let's see. Okay, guys, enough with the emojis. Tamira, Chloe, guys, please stop. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. We all appreciate it. But go back and work on your essays. Thank you. Can I please explain the wars? Joseph, which wars are you talking about? Can you be a little more specific, please? Okay, goodbye, Tamira. Have a good night. Can I talk about the reading? No, I cannot talk about it. I mean, I could, but we're not going to talk about the reading. Have a good night, Chloe. Bye-bye. No, we can, no. Am I drinking coffee? Yes, I'm drinking coffee. Yes, you guys can see coffee. That is Nespresso. Yes. No, what is, Matthew, what is the reading about? I've said it 4 or 5 times, and I mentioned it in class. The reading is about slavery in Athens and Sparta. Okay. Can I talk about the battles, the ones with the Persians, with Sparta and Athens teaming up? Okay, so you're talking about the Persian Wars. So there, in discussing the Persian Wars, we're talking about like where the 600 holds. Okay, so we're talking about, in terms of the Persian Wars, first of all, we talked about the Battle of Marathon, where where about 25,000 Persians battle 10,000 Athenians, and Persians lose 6,000 men. You're talking about the Battle of Thermopylae in 480. The Battle of Thermopylae is where Thermopylae is a small, basically beach area, and the goal was to force Persians to fight in this very small area because of the better tactics and better training of both Athens and Sparta. The Athenians and the Spartans forced the Persians to fight there. What happens is the Persians, with the help of a Spartan trader, helps find a mountain passage to get to the back of the Spartan army. The Spartans, after seeing what had happened, tell the Persians that they should tell the Athenians that they should retreats to head back to Athens to defend the city, and 300 Spartans hold off the thousands and thousands of Persians for basically 2 days. All 300 Spartans are killed, led by one of the Spartan king Leonidas, and the Athenians, because they were able to retreat, they're able to regroup, and then they're able to defeat the Persians at the Battle of Salamis, and eventually the Greek ships at the Battle of it was a naval battle. The Greek ships were able to defeat the Persians in this specific context. So that is what happens. Have I seen the movie 300? Yes, I did see the movie 300. Yes. Joseph, you're right in terms of Sparta is stronger on the army. The Athenians are better, or stronger with the navy. You're right. Correct. Good. Okay. Other questions, guys? You guys have no confidence in what you know. You guys know more than you think you do. You really do. Did Athens and Syracuse fight as well as, well, Syracuse is located in Sicily, so Athens goes to fight Syracuse, which was a ally of Sparta during the Second Peloponnesian War. So Syracuse is located in Sicily. Are we going to finish the material tomorrow? We're going to get through we'll get through as much as we can. Again, what we're going to be doing is we'll get through. We'll just mention very briefly, maybe 5-10 minutes or so. A couple of the last Chinese philosophers switched to Philip of Macedonia, Alexander. Again, all that we're doing with Philip of Macedonia and Alexander is going over what the textbook says. So there isn't going to be anything really new in our discussions tomorrow of Alexander and Philip that you are not going to find in the textbook. So you can keep that in mind as you're looking through the textbook, because it's going to be the same, really the same material. Okay. Are we going to have to compare the two Peloponnesian Wars? Maybe. There's not a lot to compare to. We didn't spend a lot of time really on the second one. So, we're not going to, I don't think I'm really going to ask a question about that. Did Greek philosophers affect the citizens? That's an interesting question, which we really didn't talk about. In theory, yes, they did. What the effect was, it's not exactly clear, because beyond the writings of the philosophers themselves, we don't have, we don't know what the citizens actually thought. Can I say hi to my wife and my daughter? Well, my daughter has been asleep now for a little more than an hour, so I'm not going to go in there and say hello to her, if that's okay with you, Hope. And my wife is inside, so I'm not going to, Did Athens have any important allies that we need to know about? No, not that we discussed. Hi.
Hey guys.
That's Jessica. Where are you going? So you're not doing it tonight?
Correct. I'm doing it stairs. I'm going to do stairs.
Okay. With my sister or no? Okay. Okay. Yeah. You want to say hi?
You're frozen.
Here.
What's that?
Say hi.
Hey guys.
Say hi.
Oh, there again.
They're all saying hi. Yeah, it's on a delay. That's
you guys want to know any secrets about Dr. Zadoff? Let me know.
Yep. They're all saying hi. I have 0 notes for the Second Peloponnesian War. Did we do anything about it? Yeah, the Second Peloponnesian War was the attack on Sicily. That was the Second Peloponnesian War. Jessica didn't know that, guys, by the way. Okay. I don't think Jessica knows what the First Peloponnesian War is either. So Okay. Yeah.
The college graduate school student would do worse on this test than you guys.
Yeah, she's right, actually. Yeah. Most people won't be able to answer these questions. So you guys are in a good position. Okay. All right, other questions, guys. We have about another 15 minutes or so left. Other questions? No, nothing. Nothing. We're having a good time here.
Who's sponsoring this week?
Sorry?
V?
No, just the coffee. I'm gonna need more coffee, guys. That's the. I'm gonna switch to espresso soon, as opposed to the coffee. Yes, they did lose Shirya when they were seniors. Yes, they did, and it is a sensitive topic. Yes.
That's because I was against. That's because I was against Rabbi Senior.
That's true. Okay.
I can't beat Rabbi Senior.
You guys can ask Rabbi Steiner the story. Yeah, have fun. I don't know philosophy at all. Neither do I, Miriam. Neither do I. Sorry. I don't know philosophy at all. It's not normal to drink coffee at this hour. I agree with you. It's not. But alas, that is what I'm doing. So I will, finish my coffee, and after we finish this, I'll have dinner and then drink more coffee so I can stay up and grade your papers, guys. Yay! My brother won Shirya when he was a junior. Right, but so that's true, but this goes back even further than that. Can you explain what is philosophy? Why is it different from the way normal people think? Philosophy is, one second, Matthew. Do we know Michael Stein? Yes, of course, we know Michael Steiner, and yes, I do know that he is your brother-in-law. So Jessica and Michael were in the same grade at Frisch, and they have known each other since they are 1 year old. So, yes. In terms of what is philosophy, again, we said philosophy was was love of knowledge, basically, and philosophy is looking for explanations. That's what it is. It's looking at greater depth. It's looking to understand, to analyze. It's looking it's looking to ask the questions of why and to understand, and to ask those questions. So that's really what it's all about. It's about asking the questions why and trying to understand the meaning of what you see around you, what you perceive, the meaning of life, the meaning of really everything, the meaning of beauty, and trying to understand it in greater depth. That's what philosophy is aiming to do. And as we said, philosophy is a hallmark of the Athenian golden age, the golden age of Athens. The golden age of Athens is when Socrates gets his start. Again, that's not the only origin of philosophy. We didn't talk about the Ionian philosophical movements. We didn't, just for a lack of time, basically. But very much philosophy. I mean, philosophy is very much a part of the golden age of Athens. Can I explain what the pencilness of the pencil means to get an analogy? So that, again, it's explaining Plato's theory of forms. And what Plato says, again, if we're holding up the pencil and saying, when I'm looking at this pencil, Plato would say, I shouldn't be, if I want to understand what a pencil is, I shouldn't just look at what's in my hands, but I should think about the nature of the roundness of the pencil, the nature of the tip, the way that the pencil is shaped, the fact that it's long. That's what I should. That's what the pencil. That's what I should think about concerning the pencil. What Aristotle would say is no. A pencil is a pencil. You can find out a lot of information about it by holding it, by looking at it. Plato says, when I'm looking at the pencil, I should be thinking about the ideas behind the pencil, the ideas of the circular nature of the pencil, that's what the pencilness of of the pencil is. The pencil, the physical pencil itself, is only representative of the deeper ideas behind the pencil. That's what I mean by that. Can you not give us hard philosophy questions because it is too deep for me to understand? I'm not a philosopher. The philosophy questions are not going to be deep. So, you know, they're going to be what they are. I think you guys will have a fine time with it. Okay. Okay. What else is there? Okay. Anything else? Other questions, guys? We have about 8 minutes left. Other questions? Oh, this is so much. What are you doing back here? Oh, gosh. For government in Sparta, can we refer to it as a military state? Well, in some ways, yes, because the military is the most important aspect of it. But there are democratic institutions, so you know that's something to think about. Let's see. Sample questions. Let me see if I can find some, and if I do, I'll post them onto Haiku. Are the philosophy questions going to be about the information about the philosophy? Meaning the what are you asking in terms of the name of the philosophies? Or I don't understand your question. Mary, have a question for Mrs. Z. She actually just went out. She's going to work out now, so she's not here. So I can pass along the question for you if you'd like me to. Freshmen are going to dominate Samira Koenig's chat on Tuesday. Absolutely. No, I'm not going to ask you to hope to answer your question. I'm not going to ask you to define epistemology or ethics. I'm not going to do that. If that helps you. Other questions, guys? But how many questions will there be? I'm not sure yet. What I think what we're going to be what we're doing, what I'm going to be doing for this exam is there's going to be greater greater parity, equality between the first and second sections. I want to know your computer password so I can get access to the test. Absolutely not. Don't even suggest that, Miri. Don't even suggest that. Samira, do you have your test from last year? She might, but the difference is Chloe didn't have any last year, Mary. But the difference is that last year's class was an honors class, so I'm not going to. So there's very different kinds of questions. Last year for the honors class, we spent about a week doing the philosophy. We did the philosophy through. We did the philosophy mainly through primary sources. So we spent a lot, and they actually had to write an essay on philosophy last year. The essay that they had wasn't on Athens and Sparta, but it was on philosophy, and it was a very different kind of essay. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, so that's it. But I would still get an idea. No, I mean they're very different questions. So there really is not. I mean, I'm going to look for the test and see. Oh no, actually they didn't have a test last year, right? That's it. Yeah, last year I didn't give them a test because I didn't give my freshmen a test last year in the second quarter because they had a philosophy essay, and then they had the Rome China project, which you guys are going to start next week. So yeah, the philosophy essay was harder than the French Revolution essay. They're different. The philosophy essay was, understanding. You had to read a lot of the primary sources, and it was very hard. So yeah, it was a very hard essay. Other questions? Any other questions? Just saying, you still never posted election night extra credit. I'm going to need it for, meaning the election night is the extra credit. If you were there, you got the full 8 points. That's all. If you have extra time, will you go to Mincha and then come back, or just stay? No. Oh, so so I didn't find out yet about extra time. I have to find out about that tomorrow. I have to go to the office and see what the story is about extra time. But if you have extra time, you're going to go. We're more likely than not, we're going to start earlier. So, okay. Where do the 8 points go to? You can use the 8 points on something, and whatever, you can use the 8 points on the test. You can use it on the essay if you don't do well on the essay. Where we take, I don't know where we're taking the test. Again, I'll find out tomorrow. I have to go down to Mrs. Kier's office tomorrow and ask Bonnie where you're taking the test. Whether you're taking the test in the classroom, starting it, or we're taking it in the Beit Midrash. I'll find out tomorrow morning, and I'll tell you guys in class tomorrow. Any other questions before we, end for the evening? Any other questions? No other questions. Okay, so we will end it there, guys. If you don't have any more questions, we will end it there. We've been doing this for about an hour or so. Is it bad if I didn't start the essay yet? Yes, it's very bad. Philosophy, Mary. Remember, you have all weekend to study, so let's not get all worked up about this. Okay, guys. My pleasure. Have a good night. Everyone get some sleep. Samira and Chloe, go do your work. And for everyone else, next week, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. is the sophomore review. So you guys should, if you want to, come on and bother the sophomores and do that to them next week. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for the questions. Again, don't freak out. Just relax. You have the weekend to study. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.